Hi, and welcome to Grit and Grace. This is episode 1. You have the right to remain calm. I am your host, David Horn, and I'm excited to be here. This is my first broadcast, my first podcast, and I'm coming to you from my garage gym in a little town in Illinois. First of all, I want to tell you I'm not an expert, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not even a professional. But what I am is a guy who's in a messed up world that's mean and harsh, and I'm just trying to get through the day and navigate life. So why am I doing this podcast? I'm doing this podcast because, one, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, in God. I believe that He died for our sins, and He's the reason that I'm here. So that's first and foremost. Number 2, I think the world is hard. I think that the world is not fair. And I think that too often we get too caught up in our feelings and our emotions. So I wanted to talk about that. Excuse me. And, I've been kicking around doing it for a while. And it's finally time. This world that we live in, it's too hard. And you shouldn't have to do it alone. And there are people out there who feel just like you feel. And I believe it with all my heart. I've had arguments and I've had disagreements with people who tell me people are just bad at their core. I don't believe that. I believe everybody is good at their core. And I believe that they make decisions based upon how they're conditioning and what their life is. So I wanted to do this podcast with, grit means being straightforward. It means talking about things sometimes that they might not be comfortable, but doing it with grace. And I want it to be relevant, and I want it to be full of substance. Because I'm a Gen Xer, and I am part of a generation that is the last generation that had to do life without the internet, without cell phones. There were cell phones, but they were the size of a small suitcase, and you had to be rich to have them. Living without technology, being able to get through the day with no internet, little to no cell phones, like I said. Our mechanism to communicate as a child was that the street lights came on. That meant you were supposed to be home about 15 minutes ago. So because you're going to be late for family dinners. We had malls, we had drive-in dinners, restaurants, we had drive-in movie theaters. We had all these places that people had to gather, and they had to see each other in person in order to communicate. Now, everybody's on their social media, they're doing podcasts, they're doing live casts, they're doing reels. They're promoting themselves in a way that's never been done before, but is often empty and not full of relevance. It's just one of those things where you have to be able to live in a world that is so hollow and without meaning, and understand you're not crazy for feeling that way. Now, we're so conditioned by the media and the internet that there's little to no in-person interactions. Like I said, we used to meet up in parking lots. You have to excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. But we used to meet up in parking lots, like I said, in the malls. And if there was one of the people that ran with us that didn't show up, we paused everything and we went out and found that person and we did status checks. Now, you can go under the radar just as easy as the next guy. So I think that today's generation really misses that. And that's where those interactions, the fake, the phony, the frauds, that's where the narcissists of this society can really, the projectionists, that's where they can really thrive. One of the things that really hit me when I was thinking about doing this show last night was I was in an academy for the type of job that I'm doing, and I had to be there for 10 weeks. And this is, 20 some years ago. So there was no yellow card that you're hurting my feelings. There was no, hey, you're going to have to back off. You're going to have to ease up on your language. We had drill instructors, and they were in every crack, cranny, and crevice of your body, lighten you up. Well, to get into what we call chow, which is lunch, you had to stand at attention, single file line, and they'd come by and they would drill you with questions. And if you didn't answer those questions appropriately, you went to the end of the line. And a lot of people would think when I say that, going to the end of the line ain't a big deal. Well, when there's limited food in there and you're a big hungry man and you want to eat, you want to get your information correct that they're asking you. Well, they purposefully would come at you 2, 3, 4 deep, yelling and screaming, because they're conditioning. They're trying to break you. At the time you didn't know, but what you're receiving, you can't think. And this is kind of where the title came from. You have the right to remain calm. So after several days of eating whatever was left, because if you went to the end of the line, you're generally getting some lettuce and maybe a few toppings. You're not getting any meat or protein. So their objective was to make you study more, to make you be able to answer their questions, because when you get out into the real world's going to be a lot harsher. Well, one thing that they never ran out of, there was 3 flavors: chocolate, vanilla, and sherbet orange ice cream. So I did several days of eating lettuce and having sherbet ice cream. But what the sherbet ice cream did, it took me back to being a kid when the ice cream truck would come around and my parents would, we were poor, but seemed to always have enough money to get some sherbet orange ice cream. So when I would eat that, under that immense pain, under that immense stress that my environment was creating, it took me back and I would relax, and the rest of the day seemed to be a little bit better. I kind of hearken it to Pavlov's dogs. When the bell would ring, they knew it was time to be hungry. So I started thinking about that, and I started, when I was in line, more focusing on sherbet ice cream than the noise, and I would always get their questions correct. So I think that in life, each one of us has to come up with a sherbet ice cream, a Pavlov's dog's bell ringing for when that stress, that noise gets too loud. Because we can bend, but we're not going to break. And too many people tend to fall into not being able to conjure up something that can bring that right to remain calm. They'll dwell in the past, or they'll worry about the future. The problem when you're doing this, the past, if you're dwelling in the past and you can't move forward, we call that depression. If you're dwelling in the future and it paralyzes you and you can't make any decisions right now, we call that anxiety. And if you have a mix of anxiety and depression, your days are going to be very hard. Now, what is the now, the here and now? That's the present. And I think Kenny Chesney has a song where he describes it as the present, because it's exactly that. It's a present. Every day is a gift, and when you realize that, no matter how hard your day is, or no matter if there's 20 minutes that sucked, but the rest of it was good, that's a good day. And in that now, when you start realizing that, that's where peace and joy start coming in. And when you can live in the now, that peace and joy, I just can't even put a value on it. As I encounter noise or the conditioning of these outside forces, I try to find a way always. People come up to me, why are you so positive? I've had some things happen to me in the past. It's going on 1.5 years, 2 years ago, but that doesn't define me. Any setback is just a setup for a comeback. So I have to be positive. If I take on a negative mindset, then I'm stuck in that, either that depression or that anxiety, and I'm not just going to do that. I'm going to treat life like sherbet ice cream, and I'm going to move forward. Now, with that being said, one of the things that I encountered when I had a huge setback was I equated to Rocky Balboa getting knocked down. I equated to, are you going to lay there and just take the 10 count out in boxing? Or are you going to get up for your standing 8 and keep moving forward? Well, one of the things I did, I really engrossed myself in the Bible, and like Jordan Peterson or even the Joe Rogan, they weren't always believers. I don't even know if they're believers, but they can agree that when you read the Old Testament, it's free therapy. The Old Testament is people live, they don't live correctly, they have hardships, they falter, they fall, God picks them up, then they do well, and it's just wash, rinse, and repeat in the Old Testament. But one of the things in the Old Testament is Psalms, and it's full of wisdom. And that's something Jordan Peterson, one of the smartest guys that I like to read and listen to and follow any chance I get. He said Psalms is full of wisdom. And Psalms 46:10 says, "Be still and know I am God." So as a human being and somebody who, deems themselves a fighter, a warrior, how do you be still? How do you trust in God? And I struggle with that, and I still do, because I'm human. And like I said, I have a fighter's mindset, and how do I not fight? How do I be still? How do I invoke my right to be calm when there's so much noise, bullshit, and other going on around me? Well, one of the things, you start working on yourself. You start living in the present. Being calm allows me to think. It allows me to take direction. It allows me to respond and not react in a positive way. That's how you be still. And then you trust in God, because God knows what you're thinking before you even think it. God knows what you're going to say before you even say it. And for me, I came to the realization, whatever happened to me, I can use it as a crutch and I can be a victim the rest of my life. Or I can say, listen, God saw it. He heard it. He knows what happened. So I don't need to explain myself. I don't need to live in that past. I don't need to be depressed. I don't have to worry about the future. He saw it. He knows what happened. He's either preparing you, protecting you, or testing you. And in some cases, and I like to believe in mine, it was all three. So I take on the belief that I can have more of an effect on myself and the people around me by living in the present, by smiling, by telling myself, okay, I've got this bowl of lemons, how am I going to make lemonade? Rather than going, I got screwed, I got lemons. So one of the things that I get asked all the time, if you're living in the now and you're working on yourself, how can you stay so positive? Well, part of it is proper assessment of yourself. Too many people are afraid to take that look in the mirror. But if you do proper assessment of yourself, then it allows you to adapt easier and it allows you to overcome easier. And nowadays, like I said, people find it hard to look at themselves in the mirror because that path, because of the way they've grown up, the way they've been conditioned, the way they see media, the way they see religion, the way they see all of this has been through the internet, and it's been right now. They haven't had to do the work. They haven't had to, kind of struggle to achieve things and then earn things. It's just right now. So what is right now? It's quicker and easier just to say, this person caused me this. This, situation caused me this. It's easier just to blame others than to properly assess and say, hey, I did this. So when you look at what your part is, I don't care if your part was 20% and the other person's part was 80. I don't care if it was 40-60, 50-50. I don't care if it was 90% your fault. You have to own what you did in order to start to live in the present, to start to experience the peace and joy that you so richly deserve. So when you spend time on yourself, there's something called the boomerang effect, and it's part of the laws of attraction that kick in. And when you start working on yourself, you start being a better person, the laws of attraction start bringing better people towards you, start bringing better situations towards you. And you're also able to, and this is huge, and I want to make sure we don't miss it, you're able to see actions over words. People's words are so powerful that they mask their actions or lack of action. So when you're wanting to assess yourself and you're honest with yourself, it's so odd how that vision of being able to see people's actions over their words, it's like having a superpower. It's like having the ability to see in the dark. And it's just one of the biggest things that I've learned. And, you just have to kind of humble yourself and be honest and give yourself, there's so many people that have compassion and empathy towards others and towards animals, but they have none for themselves. It's taking that compassion and that empathy and having it for yourself and start living in the now. And you have control over what you control. When you try to when you're trying to control that uncontrollable, that's what I deem is called noise. It's impossible. You cannot control the uncontrollable. And when you start to realize this, that's when you can take full control of your attitudes. You decide your attitude. No one else can. They can walk by and they can cause you to say, what the F? But it's ultimately you are in control of your attitude and your response. And this can only be done if you're living in the now. If you do not realize you're stuck in that past or you're too stuck in the future. I got people I know, both professionally, in passing, and it's all about, and I used to be one of them, if I can only have this. I used to say if I can only, in the late 80s, early 90s, if I could only make $10 an hour, I'd be rich. Then I made $10 an hour. If I could only make $15 an hour, well, I'd have this car. Well, I made that $15, and guess what? Nothing ever changed for me, in the realm of peace and joy, because it was never enough. And all those things that you're if I could only have $100,000 in the bank, if I could only have $10,000 in the bank, if I could only have this dress, if I could only have this pair of pants, if I could only have this status, then I will have made it. You're going to find when you get to the top of that hill of status and things that are of the flesh, it isn't what it was all made out to be. So remember, life is always going to throw shit at you, and the only thing you can do is carry a rag to wipe it off, a good wet towel to wipe it off. Because the minute you wipe it off and you keep moving forward, those forces are going to keep coming at you, those negative forces that you can't control. So you just have to live in the now and understand, control what you control. And that uncontrollable stuff, all that comes along with it when you're trying to control it is stress. So give it to God. That's that part of being still and trusting God. Give it to God and move on. And just keep working on yourself. And keep in mind, we reap what we sow. So those people that you run into that had maybe the higher percentage of the issue, and they never apologize, they never accept it, they're going to reap what they sow. God saw it. So too many people, like I said, bank in life on how much they have, how much money, how much cars, how much things, those things that I just described to you. Do you know what's the greater thing? Do you know what the best gift of life is? Time. Time is the greatest commodity. And when you start understanding what is really has value in life, like time, time can't be banked. I can't say I'm going to work extra hours so that I have more time in life. No, I have to use my time wisely. And when you start understanding those gifts, that's when true joy, peace, happiness, riches, you name it. It's just incredible. And something that I just heard on a TV show that I was watching just last night, they made a comment after somebody had passed away. No matter what happened today, you never get this day back. And I mean, we could do a whole podcast just on no matter what happens today, You never get this time back, because when bad things happen, they're not your whole day. They're not the rest of your life. They're only that if you allow it to be. No matter what happens today, you never get this day back. If you get too caught up in that depression and that stress of those negatives, and you're not living in the now. Now, I'm not saying you don't mourn, you don't take time out. I mean, you have to. You're a human being with a heart, with a brain, but you cannot let your whole day be dictated by 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and everybody is able to bend at different degrees, but it's just key to understand that no matter what happens today, you're never going to get this day back. Time is fleeting. It doesn't matter how much technology we have. It doesn't matter. I trust pharmaceuticals in the least. I do the opposite of what they say, because I feel like my time there'll be more longevity in doing the opposite of what I'm told by the government than what I am. But my point is, there's nothing that we can do to increase our time. So no matter the hand we're dealt, we have to do the most we can do with it. I don't know how long it's been. It's been fun, and I felt like I needed to get this message out. I felt like even if one person hears it, I feel like we're going to connect, and you're going to start working on thinking about the now. But what I really want you to think about, and what I want you walking away from this podcast today about you have the right to remain calm, is controlling what you can control. I mean, when you control what you can control, it's like accepting the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can, but having the wisdom to know the difference. That's serenity. That is serenity. And when we start to condition ourselves in being more positive and controlling the attitude and controlling our thoughts, because you understand, regardless of what I'm doing, life will keep moving forward. Whether you're happy, sad, mad, or glad, life don't give two shits. It's moving forward. So we have to be able to distinguish those things I just laid out for you. And you have to understand one other thing as I wrap up. You are so much stronger and powerful than you give yourself credit, and what others give you credit. It's more than you can ever know. So when you use that right to remain calm, you can take your breath, you can think, and you can dictate how you're going to move forward. And that's big. It's huge. You are in control. You get to decide. Someone else doesn't decide how you feel. Someone else doesn't get to decide how you do anything. Your attitude and your mind decides that. So I want you to give any extra thoughts you can today about the control you have of your attitudes and your thoughts and of yourself. You are worth it. Your self-worth. You're the greatest commodity on the face of earth. I'm talking about time. The only thing that rivals that or comes close is you. We can't make another you. We can get a new car. We can get a new coat. We can make more money. We can't get another you. So you have to believe in that. You have to see your worth in what your time matters. So start conditioning yourself to be more positive and understand life is going forward, whether or not you, like I said, you're happy, mad, or sad. So use your right to remain calm, and you dictate how you move forward. You decide. There was something else that laid heavy on me is how do I wrap this up? How do I conclude in the best way possible? And what I was led was by a Bible verse. It's Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard you in your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Very powerful, but it's all true. And I can tell you it's true because I'm living it. I'm not living the perfect life. I don't think we can live the perfect life. But the way I look at it is I'm living the imperfect, perfect life. And putting that faith and giving that to God, it's the way. And, you know, I always hashtag a lot of my stuff with be the light. And you have that ability. You control your mind, you control your attitude, and you control how you move forward. But you also control being that light for someone else who doesn't have that ability. So I challenge you this week to be more positive. I challenge you to give it to God, and I challenge you just to live the best life that you can and win the day. Have a blessed day, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I'm going to do these as I feel led to do them. So as the maiden voyage of Grit and Grace ends, I just want to say God bless you all and have a prosperous and healthy week.